So there have been so many movies now in the Scream franchise. It's been growing for over like 30 years? I think 30 years. I'll fact check that later. And as many Scream videos as I've made, I realized I've never made one of just like ranking my order of the movies, like how good I think they are. There's so many people that make videos like this, and so many people have so many different opinions. There's so many different ways you can order them, especially if you're younger or older, if you were alive when the older ones came out, if that's what you got to go see, and then you've got like the new gen Scream fans who came in with the 2022 movie. Personally, I was not alive when the older ones came out, but I definitely saw those before I saw the new movie. I had been a Scream fan for like 5 years before the new one came out. So I didn't even know they were making a new one when I had watched the old ones. I would definitely consider myself a new gen Scream fan just because some of the older ones I don't relate to as much. The jokes in the newer ones I get. The people I know a little bit better, the actors, but I do love the older ones so much, and I think there's something to be said about the ones that started the franchise. But today I'm going to be ranking all of the movies in the order that I think they are. Again, this is not like the official ranking, this is just personally what I think. It's changed quite a few times. I can think of some that were at my number one when I first watched the franchise, and then if I've rewatched them, you either like stick with them or they kind of get old, and you kind of learn that as you rewatch them. Obviously, I'm going to be discussing the plots of some of these movies, or all of them, so spoiler warning, I'm about to spoil every single one. So if you don't want to see that, then I would recommend, why would you be watching this video if you haven't seen all of them? But if you are doing that, I recommend you go watch them first because these movies are so great, and it's literally like the majority of what I talk about because I'm such a huge fan. Now I'm just gonna get straight into it. I'm not even gonna draw it out. So my 6th place movie is definitely Scream 3. It's a pretty wide margin for me of how low Scream 3 is compared to the other ones. I personally love all of the movies, but out of all the movies, this one definitely lacks the Scream touch a bit. One big element of this movie is the Stab franchise, which is the in-universe Scream franchise in Scream. So the movie takes place on the sets of this Stab movie and in Hollywood with all the different actors. You got like the director, there's issues with that. Sydney's a shut-in during this movie, and unfortunately due to the actress's schedule, she's not as present in this film, which I personally don't like. Sydney is eventually drawn out of hiding, and she has to try to face Ghostface and her past, and a lot of this movie is kind of going back to the very beginning and touching on that and like why it all started. One thing I really like about Scream 3 is the opening. It's the only movie to kill off like a pre-established character in the opening scene, which is huge, and I thought that was really neat, and I felt like Cotton Weary was the right character because his arc had finished. So that is one thing I really like about the movie, and that's probably my favorite scene of the movie is the opening. A huge, maybe one of the most huge lacking points for me in this movie is the Ghostface, which I have voiced plenty of times. I'm not a fan at all of Roman as the killer. It's not even the fact of him being the only Ghostface, it's just the fact that I don't like him as a Ghostface. Like, I feel like you could have a movie where there's only one. I feel like that could work. But just, he seems really whiny and immature, and the type of personality he shows after he's unmasked doesn't match what they're telling me he did. And it just, I don't really like him. He's not present at all in the movie. I personally like it more when the Ghostface who's revealed is more present in the movie and they trick me into thinking it's not them, which is very impressive. Not placing him in the movie and then just like, oh, it was him. And also, like, I feel like there's only 2 suspects you could really have. That really flopped for me. Unfortunately, with the timing of this movie, with current events going on, they had to be more comedic than scary, which I love horror, obviously. So that doesn't really hit for me as much. I know some people like more of the comedy from them. I like the more scary ones. So I know there were some issues with who was writing the movie and trying to get it out. I don't think Scream 3 is a bad movie. I just think it's my least favorite. So, and I know there are other people who agree with me, but you know what? If you like Scream 3, good for you. It's a fun time for sure. At number 5, I have Scream 6, which is the most recent one. I got to go see that one in the theater, so that was really fun. This is the only movie to not have Sidney Prescott in it. It's more about the Carpenter sisters, and they move move away to New York to try to start a new life. But of course, Ghostface follows them and they have to face those challenges. And really the main driving plot of this movie is them taking action to try to figure out who it is. I think that's a really unique way of doing a Scream movie because I don't think any of the other movies do that, where they are like actively trying to figure out who it is, really. I guess Dewey and Gale and the old ones kind of do that, but Sidney Prescott always was running. Like, she never really wanted to figure out who it is. She always just wanted to hide and like be left alone. So I think that is interesting how they did it differently in 6. The problem that creates is that there's no element of like Ghostface appearing. Like, they would be out looking for Ghostface and then they'd run into Ghostface. And it felt like they didn't have any other goals in this movie besides that. And it's kind of fun to have like different branches to a story and be able to play with that. And it just, I don't know, it just felt really predictable at points where they were in the park hunting for Ghostface and oh, Ghostface called them. I don't know. It just felt a little predictable. I would have liked it better had they had something else that they were doing, because they had a whole thing going with Tara and Chad, but they didn't really explore that. It was more of like really just on the sidelines. I think that's what lacks for this movie for me. I didn't really like any of the ghost faces, which hurts the movie. I did really enjoy this movie, and I thought the opening was wild when I first saw that. My mouth literally dropped at that. This movie on rewatches for me hasn't been as fun because there's some major holes in the writing where like one of the kills, none of the ghost faces could have done it because they were all shown somewhere else, and that really bothers me because the whole fun of rewatching it is kind of trying to figure out who did what, and a lot of it doesn't line up for me, so that is a huge problem. But I do love the Carpenters, and I think it was a fun addition to the franchise, so. Okay, this is the point in my list where I'm gonna lose people, and it's totally understandable because this movie does not deserve to be in this spot. I think those bottom two are the ones that it's like, I see a lot of problems. And these next four, like, I just absolutely love. Like, I could watch any of these and be super excited about it. So I love this next movie that I'm about to say. But the 4th place spot goes to Scream 2, which that movie, when I first watched it, did not get excited at all. But over time, as I've watched that, as I've reacted to my friends with it, like, that is a good movie. Like, it's so much fun. In Scream 2, we see what's happened to the characters since the first events of this whole franchise. We see Sydney and her friends in college and how they've grown past everything. But of course, Ghostface is back and he follows her, and she's got to figure out why this is happening. Gale and Dewey are back, and they try to figure out who is copycatting the killings of Woodsboro. I think the character development is so good for all 3 of the main characters. As sad as Randy's death is, it's just a huge shock, and it's like, wow, that's like a huge moment in the franchise. I think the reasoning of why this one is lower than the other ones, which are also good, is the ghost faces. I don't like either of the ghost faces in this movie, really. I guess I kind of like Mickey, but he's so gone during the movie. It's like, come on. Like, he wasn't present at all. I think the ghost faces are stronger in the other movies than this one. This movie has my favorite scenes in the entire franchise. So the top 2 scenes, like, if I was gonna name my top 2, they're both in this movie. This movie has like scenes that I just really, like, I don't pay attention to because I don't like, and then it just has the best scenes ever. So I think ranking the movies as a whole, that's why this one also doesn't get as high. But this is a great movie. Like, oh my gosh, I know a lot of people, this is their favorite, and totally fair. Like, if it's not fair that it's in spot 4, I'm gonna be honest. It's just like, there's too many good ones. I love all of the movies. That's the problem with ranking them like this. Like, I cannot pick between all of them, but I'm being forced to, so it's gonna go in spot 4 today. Now, spot number 3, I have Scream 4. Something about this movie really is special to me. When I first watched Scream, the only movies that were out were 1, 2, 3, and 4. So 4 was the last one I watched. And when I watched all of those, Scream 4 was by far my favorite. When I first watched all of them, that was my favorite movie. And over time, I think rewatching it, I've seen some of the flaws that people will speak on, but there are so many great things about this movie. Scream 4, for the first time, is showing the next generation and how they've reacted to what happened in the past. All of the main characters are back, but we're also introduced to this new cast trying to, like, I guess, make them into the new generation that's being attacked by Ghostface. And Ghostface is back after like 10 years. Sydney this time not only has to protect herself, but also her family, which I find very interesting. And I love that in the Carpenter story, Sam kind of has that too with Tara. I like that she has to be protecting herself and Tara, and I feel like that's kind of what Scream 4 was pretending to be with Jill. I think Ghostface-wise, this is the most brilliant play that they've ever done, where they make you think that Jill is the new Sydney, or that Sydney has to protect her, so that you don't expect that she's the killer. At least that's what happened for me. Everyone I've ever watched this movie with has been shocked when Jill's revealed, including myself. I really like some of the new characters in this movie. I really like Kirby. I even like Olivia. I think she's fun for what she is, even though she dies super quick. This is the only movie in the franchise where Dewey and Gale are actually together without fighting. Well, no, they are fighting, but they're actually together. The other part of Scream 4 that I really like is the false ending, because no other movie has ever done it, where they have the finale and then it goes past the finale. Because by the time Jill escapes that fake finale, you're like, where is the movie gonna go from here? Because she won. And I think that is really fun. I remember the first time I watched that, I was like, what is the movie gonna do? Because, like, she can't win at the end of this. So I think that's a really fun moment that no other movie has been able to capture. I like big shocks and I like twists. So this one for me did that really well. And that's why I have it so high, even though it doesn't have the greatest scenes, and the opening is definitely the worst out of all of the movies. But I appreciate Scream 4 for what it has, and some of the characters, and what it tricked me with. In the number 2 spot, I have Scream 5, or Scream 2022. Scream 5 is the first actual rebrand of the main characters, because Jill was a false main character. We are introduced to the Carpenter sisters for the first time. We learn the dark secret of Sam's past, that she's actually the daughter of Billy Loomis, and she has to kind of deal with that as she is now having her family attacked by Ghostface killers, and tries to figure out how someone found this out, why they're attacking, and has to try to keep what's left of her family together. So you have to understand that this is the first Scream movie I ever got to go see in the theaters. I think it's the first horror movie I ever got to go see in the theaters. So I was so excited. I got to, for the first time, watch all the trailers, watch like all the theories or whatever. I had so much fun looking at all that. I think this movie has really great characters. I really enjoyed a lot of them. I loved the main 2 sisters. I thought they were great. I loved having all of the main cast return. I, to this day, could argue why Dewey's death was so stupid, but that's for a different video. I think this movie was a really fun time. I liked the opening. I liked the ending. I liked the Ghostface killers. I loved the Ghostface killer reveals. I loved Richie's. I thought it was really brilliant how they did that, and kind of made you think that it couldn't be him. Like, that was brilliant, because you're like, it's someone else because they're in the mask. No, it wasn't. I think with rewatches, this one has really grown for me. There's just a lot of really good sentimental moments, and funny moments, and scary moments. Like, I feel like this one has it all, which is what you want from a Scream movie, or at least that's what I want from a Scream movie. One thing I will say that this movie is heavily lacking in is the motive. The motive for me of just like, we want a good stab 8 is not good at all. I think they should have made it connected to real events instead of the stab events, because stab is not like a real thing. Like, it's so stupid in the franchise. The fact that that was the motive is wild. Other than that, I feel like there's a lot of positive things about this movie. I do like a lot of the scenes, and it's just a fun time. And as a new Gen Z Scream fan, I have to appreciate that I got the full experience of watching this in the theaters, getting the reverse Drew Barrymore thing with the opening scene, and I got to experience it all. So, and I hate to be super predictable, but you know, like, the best is the first movie. Like, you can't really argue with that, even if it's not your personal favorite. Like, it is just objectively the best movie. And my number 1 spot is Scream 1. Scream 1 is the opening of the entire thing. There's a killer on the loose who kills a girl and her boyfriend, and eventually he targets this girl named Sydney Prescott, and it kind of starts to connect to her mom in the past, and she has to try to figure out who would be doing this and who killed her mom is basically the whole premise of this movie. Scream 1 is just a perfect movie. Like, I cannot think of really much that like is wrong with it. Like, for the other ones, I feel like I can pick out something that is wrong with all of them in some way. This one, I don't think I can. Like, the killers are top notch, for sure the best killer duo in the entire franchise. Like, no one has ever matched Billy and Stu. Like, they are such a good killer duo, and the difference between them is really powerful. Billy's like scariness and Stu's craziness, like it's so perfect. The opening scene of this movie is what makes the whole thing, just because it immediately gets you invested. And I didn't get to experience it, but just thinking that she's gonna be in the whole movie and then they don't do that is just such a crazy idea. I love that so much. Sidney Prescott is one of my favorite main characters in a movie ever, just because she's vulnerable and strong at the same time, and I think that's really fun to watch her go through that and grow into who she is going to be in the Scream 7 movie. So, like I said, I don't really have a big critique of this movie. Like, I cannot think of one. The characters are just top notch. I mean, you've got the most iconic scenes in this movie, and I feel like that's something that everyone can agree on, is that Scream 1 is just so good. Like that is at the top of everyone's list. I've never met someone who doesn't have that in spot 1 or 2 or 3 of their list. So at the end of the day, you can't outdo the original, so that's just how it's gonna be. And even as a new Gen Z Scream fan, I have to appreciate that aspect of the franchise. So don't worry, I'm not stupid. I do know that Scream 1 is the best movie. That's my list of all the Scream movies ranked. I know that's kind of like a basic video, but I think it's fun to think about. Everyone likes to rank their favorite movies. So, speaking of which, if you have a different ranking, which you probably do, let me know what it is, because I like to read all those. It's really fun for me. So, that's all. Okay, bye!